Let's take the sales data 2016 and experiment with how we can control calculation that takes place where the data crosses. So at the moment we know if we use a numeric field, Excel will choose sum, so it will add up the values. If you choose a text field, it will then choose count. So if we were trying to count the IDs, because they are numeric, the pivot table will actually try to sum them. And we've seen that previously in an example. We need to be able to control what calculation takes place and what other calculations are available. With the sales data 2016, I'm going to create a new sheet and in here insert a pivot table. Now the pivot table is a named range called data. So all I need to put is equals data, tell it where to start the sheet, A1's fine, OK. If I then take my countries and place them in the rows and take the sales and place that in the values, I get sum of sales. Now if I don't want the sum of sales, then I can change that. There's a little drop down arrow here, value field settings, takes me into this separate dialog box. And what you'll find you can do here is a number of things. One is we can change the custom name. So it doesn't have to say sum of sales. You can see it says sum of sales at the top. This is effectively the column heading. And I want to rename that to sales. But you'll find you can't actually call it sales because the source is sales. But I could call it sales and $1. In the bottom section here is where I control the function that takes place. We know it's defaulted to sum because it's a numeric field. And clicking on sums change the title again. So I'll go back to change that before we come out. I could change to count. So that will count the actual number of sales, or average. So that will be average sales values. The max, highest sales value, the min, lowest sales value, the product, the multiple of the sales value, count nums, and then we're into standard deviation and variance, should you wish those in your pivot table. But ordinarily, we will be sticking with this top section here, sum, count, average, max, min, and possibly product. If actually I don't want to sum the sales, but I want to find the average, then I could choose average. That changes the custom name, which I can amend myself to average, and then OK. And now the label changes, and the totals that we see displayed are the actual average. And because some of the values are bigger and smaller than others, or dividing by bigger and smaller than others, some of the decimal places are quite long, like Belgium, for example, 3.6566666667, and some are quite short, 4.34, 2.99. It would be nice for presentation if we could control that. Well, we can. It's all done through the same dialog box effectively where we change the function. So in the little drop down, value field settings, there's our function. Here's the number format option. So one click in here then allows me to control what this number will look like. Well, it's an average. I want it to be a number, but with 2 decimal places. OK, OK. And then I see 2 decimal places, much tidier, much neater, and more consistent down the whole column. But what I want is actually sum, and to display this number in dollars. So we choose currency, make sure the dollar symbol's chosen, OK, OK, and then we now see the sum of the sales with dollar signs, because I formatted to show dollar signs. This little drop-down value field setting controls 3 things really. One is the decision on which function to use on the numbers or values within that column. The custom name you would then like, make sure that you change the custom name after you've changed the function, because changing the function changes the custom name. And then we have control over the number format. And this is exactly the same options as you see when you go to format a cell, but just with the number options. We don't have all the other tabs here. We just control the number formatting. So number, general, currency accountant, date, percentage, etc. So OK and OK leaves me with all those options in place. And because I have the ability to change the function, there's nothing to stop me actually using the same field over and over again in my pivot table, but applying a different function each time. At the moment I'm seeing sum of sales. Let's go in there and change that to total sales. Bring down the sales column again, so I can add this in here as many times as I want. Bring it down a 3rd time. Notice the dialog box then gets a scroll bar. Now they all assume sum. Each time I add them it assumes sum, but there's no formatting taking place, notice. Let's go for the second one I chose. Change that to average, and then we'll change the heading to average. The number format will go to number with 2 decimal places. OK, OK. And then we get an average column. The 3rd one, I can then change that. Let's say max, highest sales. Number format is going to be currency. OK, OK. And then we get the high sale for each country, because they're still broken down by each country. Don't forget we can change this label here, so the column heading makes sense to anybody reading the pivot table. So each of these columns are drawn from the same data. They're all drawn from the sales data, but we're carrying out a different function on each one. The total sale, average sales, the highest sales. We really ought to count the number of sales, shouldn't we? So let's bring the ID in, drop that in. Notice that because it's a numeric field, it's assumed sum. So we end up some very large numbers in here. What I don't want to do though is sum, I want to count. Go into the drop down, value field, change to count, and then we'll just call that sales, because it's the actual number of sales. Okay, can't do that because sales is already in use. This column here is using sales, so we're going to call it hash sales. Okay, and then we get our quantity of sales. Australia, for example, have made 5 sales. The total value of those sales is $21.70. The average value of those sales is $4.34. That ought to be in dollars as well. We come back down here, average, number format, currency, still to 2 decimal places. Okay, okay. The highest individual sale was $6.99, and that was achieved by carrying out 5 sales. Notice Bangladesh is 1 sale, so effectively the highest, the average, and the total is all exactly the same, which helps you to believe that the numbers are realistic. We can add in the same column multiple times, we can change the function that is being actioned on those columns of data, and we can format the number that appears in our pivot table. We're pretty much in control of what we get.